Hello, my name is Rowan Atwell, and I was a government relations intern with MTA Visions, a global corporate social responsibility and government relations firm based in Washington, D.C. My two goals for the summer were working and learning more about how legislation was passed and written, which I was able to do through the two projects we completed, which were the Your Law and Change a Law projects, and also to learn more about legislation on the local, state, and federal level, which I personally did not work on, although I learned many things through insight of local, state, and federal officials. Through my summer internship experience, I completed many assignments that helped me grow in my future endeavors. These projects and tasks included the Your Law and Change a Law projects, the MIO chats, or My Expert Opinion, which where we chose current events every week and discussed them among our peers, policy briefs. In these policy briefs, we discussed legislation for each week and wrote about 3 to 5 of them. Here's an example. H.R. 5, or the Equality Act, stands to prohibit all discrimination of those based on sex, sexual orientation, or gender identity. It also prohibits individuals from being prohibited to use public facilities such as bathrooms or locker rooms. This bill was sponsored by Congressman David Cicilline, and it falls under the policy area of civil rights and liberties. The committee report states that this bill was meant to protect those of the LGBTQ community, as well as women, who historically have been publicly barred from using public facilities and accommodations. Discrimination against this class of people has substantially increased over the years, especially after gay marriage became legal in all 50 states. This bill has aimed to make discrimination against this class of people punishable under the law. It has currently passed through the House and is now awaiting decision in the Senate. These policy briefs really played into one of my goals for the summer, which was learning more about how legislation was passed and written. During these briefs, we would give what the law was, who sponsored it, where it was at during the proceedings, and our recommendation personally on how we think the law could be changed and if we recommend it be passed or tabled. In total, in my time as an intern, I wrote 23 policy briefs over a wide variety of subjects. In addition to these policy briefings, we also participated in weekly briefings in which we discussed the previous tasks, the upcoming tasks, and if we had any questions or concerns that needed to be addressed. We also participated in weekly meetings, which would happen every Tuesday morning, where we would discuss previous tasks, go over our MIO chats, any of the projects that we had been completing, and so on and so forth. Another small project we engaged in was a media personality project, in which we chose a media personality to emulate on an issue that they were discussing of importance. I chose Tomi Lahren because I love how she, regardless of what others think, will give her opinion based on fact and will not be swayed no matter what anyone says. Here's an example. Good evening, my name is Rowan Atwell, and I will currently be discussing the healthcare issue going on in the state of California. California Democrats are proposing we give free healthcare to all illegal immigrants in the state. Governor Newsom has proposed we give $98 million to all those aged 19 to 25. The State Assembly has proposed we give $3 billion to all those over the age of 19, and the State Senate has proposed we give money, $372.2 million to be exact, to all those aged 19 to 25, and to all those 65 and above. Let's just think about this for a second. We have California Democrats not arguing over whether or not we should be giving money to illegal immigrants, but how much money we should be giving to illegal immigrants. We have middle-class Californians who are leaving the state because they can't afford to pay their taxes, they can't afford housing, and they can't afford gas. So instead, they are leaving the state because they can no longer afford to live here. This seems to be of no concern to the California Democrats, as they are arguing about giving benefits to those who have no legal right to be in this country in the first place and who don't pay taxes at all. There's also a huge homeless issue in the state, and the Democrats are making a statement that the people who don't have any right to be in this country are more important than our citizens dying on the street. Another huge issue is that we have a nationwide crisis of veterans who fought and died for our country, dying on waiting lists to receive the health care that they so rightly deserve. And yet, we have Democrats who are arguing about the amount of money we should be giving those who don't belong in this country. Now, they say we're supposed to have a huge budget surplus, but yet, if there's such a huge budget surplus, then why do we have such income inequality and we have taxes upon taxes upon taxes imposed on our citizens to pay for all of these illegal immigrants? I just find it incredibly tone deaf of the California government, specifically the Democrats, obviously, that do not seem to care about the citizens who put them into office in the first place. Another task we completed was learning your leaders, which basically had us choose one member of the House and Senate that were Republican, and one member of the House and Senate that were Democrat. And by doing this, we would dig deeper into their backgrounds and learn more about where they came from, what their families are like, and why they do what they do. I chose Joni Ernst as my Senate Republican and Patty Murphy as my Senate Democrat. I chose Liz Cheney as my House Republican and James E. Clyburn for my House Democrat. By researching more about these representatives of our country, we were able to better understand why they did what they did and to better approach them with legislation that we proposed. I completed an HRPO individual task, which included us choosing a topic that we felt strongly about and proposing the argument for the other side. I chose whether or not children should be vaccinated in order to enroll in schools. And then I argued against it, as I firmly believe that children should be vaccinated in order to gain access to school, in order to better protect all of the children that cannot get immunized due to herd immunity. Also, due to my studies in this internship, I got to watch House and Senate proceedings, which really expanded my view of the legislative process. As I mentioned earlier, as GR interns, we participated in 2 projects, the Your Law Project and the Change a Law Project. The Your Law Project we did solo, where in the Change a Law Project, we got to choose a partner. My partner for my Change a Law Project was Julie Harding, and the law we chose was the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986. Here is a brief overview of our law. I, along with my partner, Julie Harding, chose the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986 for our Change a Law project. According to the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, 19.7 million Americans aged 12 and up had a substance abuse problem in 2017. In addition, 8.5 million Americans dealt with a mental health disorder as well as substance abuse. Drug abuse and addiction cost American society $740 billion a year due to workplace loss in productivity, healthcare, and crime-related costs. Currently, drug use is illegal in the United States, and usually those caught disobeying this law are thrown into jail. We want to change this law because we think that drug abuse is a mental disorder and needs to be treated as such. These people are not getting the help they deserve by being thrown into jail, and instead should be treated as mental patients or health patients, and should be taken to treatment facilities for rehab as opposed to being thrown in jail. This would save the American taxpayers their money, as well as providing help for these people that they so desperately need. During this project, we searched for think tanks or other organizations that might support or oppose our law and why. We then chose representatives from both House and Senate in order to support our law. We also identified the White House's position on our law and where they stand on the issue in general. And finally, we submitted a regulatory comment to the federal agency or administration that was currently administering the law. And finally, we submitted a regulatory comment to the federal agency currently administrating to the law. My reflections after completing this project include that creating or changing a law is incredibly taxing, and there are more players involved than I had originally thought. I also discovered that while changing or creating a new law, both sides need to be taken into consideration when creating the different alternatives. Trying to make everyone happy is almost an impossible task, but there needs to be something to keep the majority happy, while also achieving the goal I had in mind for the law. Overall, I really enjoyed this project, and I'm glad I got to participate in it. Now, the Your Law project was where each of us designed and created our own law. My law was called the Oceans Cleanup Act of 2019. Basically, this act is all about the environment, plastic pollution, and the cleanups of our oceans. Here's what I mean. The Ocean Cleanup Act of 2019 focuses mainly on the pollution of our ocean and what we can do to stop it. Measures include reducing single-use plastics, funding and providing tax breaks for those who are researching alternatives that are eco-friendly to these plastics, as well as providing ocean task forces to go out and clean up the environment, which not only will help with the pollution, but will also provide jobs for the American public. I then selected co-sponsors from both the House and Senate to support my bill, focusing mainly on those who showed significant support for ocean cleanup and wildlife preservation. I then recorded House and Senate floor speeches to support my law. I also simulated a congressional hearing in the Subcommittee on Water, Oceans, and Wildlife, and chose witnesses to support my bill, including the chairman, Jared Huffman, as an example, as well as professors and other ocean pollution and wildlife experts. I then was tasked to try and get feedback from actual representatives on how they would change my bill and whether or not it would be passed or not. During both of these projects, it really gave me a new insight on how difficult it is to write a law and or change a law. It takes a lot of paperwork, it takes a lot of work from multiple parties, and I admire those who do it on a daily basis. During our weekly staff meetings, we often had professionals come in and speak with us on what they do for a living and answer any questions that we may have about their particular chosen field. Ms. Beliapa and Ms. Tanbe came in to speak with us about corporate social responsibility and about a new law that was passed in India that would require companies to pay more attention and make CSR a priority in their workplace. Ms. Eres, who is a counselor of the Embassy of Canada, came to speak with us about the update made to the North American Free Trade Agreement involving Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Mr. Arts and Ms. Lafargue spoke about their roles on the Hill and also spoke about how things work in congressional offices and answered any questions we may have about working for congressional representatives. Congressman Meeks gave us his insight on our international partners and how we interact with them, as well as his account and ideas about the Paris Agreement and whether or not we should still be involved in it or not. Lieutenant Governor Carroll of my own home state, Florida, gave us the advice to never take anything at face value and to always do more research before forming an opinion. Senator Tart and Mayor Wood gave us some helpful insight on the relationships between local and state government. And finally, Commissioner Krepp gave us very helpful insight on her role and also gave me really, really good advice as to never be afraid when facing a large opponent, as I asked her about her court case against the Department of Justice and how it affected her and those who she was trying to protect. I'm grateful to my internship here that even allowed me to listen to these people speak on their roles as they're major players, and I hope to be among their ranks one day. My top 3 takeaways as an intern with MTA Visions was I learned a lot more about legislation by drafting a bill, recruiting co-sponsors, etc. By being remote, I also had to remind myself that assignments were due, they had deadlines, and I had to adhere to them and think quickly on getting everything done in time. And finally, I learned what policy briefings were and how they needed to be structured. So now, just in case my future leads me down a legislative path, I'll have the insight and knowledge I need to continue on that work. After completing my internship, I hope to finish off my classes with a new internship in DC and graduate in December with my bachelor's in international relations with a minor in political science and a concentration in security studies, and eventually go on to work in the intelligence community or in foreign affairs. I recommend the MTA Visions CSR and GR Professional Development Program to anyone looking to learn more about the legislative process and all it entails with projects and assignments, as well as looking to work in a fast-paced environment with really great people rallying around you. At the end of each of our weekly Tuesday meetings, we would have something called a quote out. A quote out is basically our way of ending the meeting on a high note. My final quote out is, "Around here, we don't look backwards for very long. We keep moving forward, opening up new doors, and trying new things. Because we're curious, and curiosity keeps leading us down new paths." And that's by Walt Disney. I want to give a special thank you to MTA Visions, especially Miss Adonis, Miss Hughes, and Mr. Mateus, for giving us all of the support and help we could possibly need as interns and leading us through this new development in our professional careers. And I wanted to especially thank my fellow interns for being so great and wonderful as we continue through this journey together. I hope we all continue to stay in touch in the future, and this is Rowan Atwell, signing off.